I think a lot of folks, especially if they're subject matter experts, either have an amazing technology to start or an amazing therapeutic to start, but they oftentimes are very set on that solution and not necessarily what it's solving. Because you could have the best tech in the world, but if it's not really solving a problem people want to solve, it's not a business. It's just a technology.
We are joined by Dr. Sarah Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. Your career began as a surgeon and, evolved into the role of, healthcare technology strategist. Talk to me about your journey and kind of straggling both lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of docs don't move into business or tech until later in their career, but for me, it was really different. So I actually felt rather constrained at the bedside. As a surgeon, you can only take care of maybe 20 people a day if you're lucky. Mm-hmm. And I knew I could make bigger impact. So how could I scale myself? And that's how I ended up kind of making that transition to the tech sector, because now I can impact hundreds, thousands, millions, or billions of people every day.
Right. So what did that transition look like from, we'll say, operating room to boardroom?
Yeah. So doctors are pretty much the dumbest smart people you'll ever meet. And so I felt like I needed to retool. And so I went back to UT Austin, got my MBA. And in the middle of that, I started kind of applying broadly to tech jobs, pharma jobs, health admin, et cetera, and kind of use that interview process to help me figure out where I could make that impact I was desiring. And my first gig was at Next Gen Healthcare, being a subject matter expert on what it's like to be a doctor in a hospital. But I was really there for maybe 6 months. And they said, hey, how about running all the product for the entire division? I said, well, let's do that. So I got to learn how to do product management the really tough way, trial by fire, critical access hospitals. So no money, lots of problems. But it started everything for me. So I went from Next Gen through many different roles there, chief of the staff of the chief strategy officer. So got to do a ton of M&A I definitely shouldn't have been able to do, wrote lots of business cases and did all the product ops. So I got to teach the product managers all over the world how to build business cases, how to commercialize. And that kind of launched me into multiple startups, had a great exit with ESO based in Austin. We did a nice exit with Vista. They were focused on pre-hospital, so firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs, and that was during COVID. And so when you're driving product and, the development cycle at that point in such a tremulous time, it's exciting. And we put out so many different products during that year, and it's really interesting to bring people together during a stressful time like that.
Yeah, talk to me more about the tremulous, stressful time. What was the time period here?
So like many startups, we were rather mature. We kind of were in that, I'd say, 100, 200 person phase. Mm-hmm. And we had lots of customers all over the United States, but we were a butts and seats startup. Everyone was in Austin. We were all there together. And we had just opened our Belfast software development team. And then all of a sudden we were remote. And so our entire culture was very much in person, very much, in conference rooms together, whiteboards. And so bringing a team that was so used to that into 100% remote was very different. But at the same time, I love being remote. It's my preferred way to work. And so for some of us, we just excelled. For some folks, it was definitely harder than others.
Right. That makes sense. And, for healthcare, that's something that you need to be on site to truly understand the impact of and the problems. Here, we definitely understand the importance of forward deployed engineering. I'm curious, in your storied, history of a career so far, when you were saying, you want to touch more lives, have more impact in your career so far, what was, do you think, the biggest moment of achievement or impact that you really felt that it was all worth it?
I'd say that my time at Oracle was instrumental in my entire career. So they brought me in to build out our OCI business for healthcare and life sciences globally. And so I got to start working with ministries of health all over the world. I got to start working with big pharma, little pharma, payers, and an entire international group that was really thinking big. And that was really quite amazing, especially because it was at that time where Oracle was still the dark horse for OCI. They had just kind of scaled it and were going strong. And it was at a point where every healthcare organization, everyone in life sciences was willing to make that jump. So we were still convincing them to go to cloud. But I think what really sealed it was when we had our $29 billion acquisition of Cerner. And if you've ever been a part of a really large acquisition, this is so much bigger than any acquisition I've ever been a part of.
Right.
And it was really exciting to bring in 26,000 new best friends, from going to be the only doctor at Oracle to having a lot of doctors at Oracle, and to making that impact that you could see at hospitals every single day. Sometimes it's hard when you're doing infrastructure and platform to feel like you've made a difference, even though you know you have.
Yeah.
But when you are kind of going from app all the way down infrastructure, you can see it. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, you cited a bunch of different like kind of stakeholders and potential users there at OCI and Oracle. What was your North Star that you were building towards?
So it kind of depends. You know, Oracle is a very large organization. And so when we were on the cloud side for platform infrastructure, a lot of CIOs, again, Ministry of Health level, for building complete infrastructure for an entire country. So really talking to people who are putting that infrastructure into their healthcare system, into their country, into large healthcare systems, into large payer systems. So I'd say mostly CIO, CTO of hospitals, et cetera, for that piece. But then when you get to the Cerner market, it's very different. So it's a large portfolio, and so you have lots of stakeholders. So you have the actual users, nurses and doctors, who are on the front lines, ultimately utilizing every feature you push in. But then you have large data lake houses, et cetera. The old one was Healthy Intent, which they've now renamed. And so how are you going to take life science data or healthcare data and not only make it useful for a healthcare system or a life science company, but help them if they decide we want to use this for monetization, or help them to decide, hey, are we going to use this as the basis for AI training? And so again, different kinds of stakeholders for all of those.
Right. That makes sense. So you have a book coming out soon. It's available for pre-order now.
It is.
Tell us a little bit about the book, and also like kind of what inspired you to even make it in the first place.
Sure. So it's called The Borderless Healthcare Revolution. It's published by Wiley. It'll be out on December 11th. And it's really aimed towards two audiences. First, our leaders in healthcare delivery. So this is everyone from CEO and C-suite in a hospital setting or an IDN, all the way down to lead nurse on the floor. I think it's really important. We read so many books, we read so many articles, and oftentimes there's not a lot of actionable insights. It's a lot of questions or opinions. But in every chapter of this book, I really hit home on what you can do today to improve access for patients. And I think that every level of a hospital system has that ability, whether you're producing the budget, choosing devices or technology to bring into the organization, or taking care of patients every day. The other audience that I built this for is builders, because I'm building my whole career. And everyone makes the same mistakes. And so when I advise startups, unfortunately, the same themes keep coming up. How can you build in access from the get-go? It's not a bolt-on. How can you ensure the right patient population or the right stakeholders, just like you mentioned, actually have a pervasive and urgent problem that you're truly solving? And I think a lot of folks, especially if they're subject matter experts, either have an amazing technology to start or an amazing therapeutic to start, but they oftentimes are very set on that solution and not necessarily what it's solving. Because you could have the best tech in the world, but if it's not really solving a problem people want to solve, it's not a business. It's just a technology. And so I go through what I call the 5 pillars of access: geography, financial, cultural, trusted knowledge, and digital. If we look at healthcare problems and healthcare access, the reason I brought this book to fruition is that we're in a really polarizing time right now. But every single person I talk to, here in the office, anywhere, you, me, we all have a healthcare access story that we can talk about.
Right.
Whether it's your parents, your kids, or you. And that's something that everyone can get on board with. So how can we solve those access problems together?
Right. That's incredible. One of the themes of your book is eliminating geographic barriers in healthcare. What does truly borderless healthcare look like?
Well, I think a lot of people consider borders like country borders.
Yeah.
But we were just talking before we started about, my home state of New York. Yes, I'm looking through the camera at this one. There's New York City, and then there's upstate New York. And New York City has some of the best hospitals in the world. It has such great, ingenuity and healthcare, all the things. Upstate New York, there's cows, there's corn.
Right.
Yes, there's hospital systems, but it's different. However, who has access problems. Yes, it could be rural farmers, but also could be the next block over in Brooklyn. And I think that people think about really stark borders, country to country, but they don't realize that a streetlight could be a border. A river could be a border. The fact that you can't get to a hospital or your appointment on a bus could be a border. And so I really take that geography piece and kind of blow it out of the water in terms of what we think of as real geography borders.
Right. That's fascinating. Going back to what you were saying earlier, you're talking about having truly, an actionable playbooks for, these different pillars that you're talking about. And that seems really relevant to kind of the age of AI we're in right now, because if we think about the last, let's say 15, 20 years, in Web 2.0, we've seen a lot of software as a service, but now with AI, people aren't interested necessarily, doing the work themselves through a platform. They want immediate impact via the AI. So we're kind of heading in this impact as a service type of world. And so I'm curious as to how you feel that fits and what the opportunities are, in this potentially borderless world that you're imagining.
So first of all, the ability to build new software via vibe coding, the ability to bring new technologies.
Do we want to vibe code healthcare?
I'm not vibe coding healthcare, but I'm just saying, I can produce something in my garage, essentially, in a couple hours. And that's your prototype. Oh, great. I mean, there's so much rigor that needs to occur with real healthcare SaaS models, with real life science SaaS models. However, the prototyping, the first steps, they're accessible to builders. What I'd say is that with AI, we have so much technology moving forward. It's not the tech that's the issue at all. We're going to continue to innovate. Here we are in, the Valley in California, and every other organization I pass on the road is doing something amazing in the tech sector. Wonderful. That's not going to stop. We're just going to keep accelerating. The issue, though, is that to adopt it and bring it into real life is the hard part. And so when I think about how AI comes into that, it's only as good as the data we put in. We know that. Okay. But it goes back to solving that real problem. If I'm solving a problem, am I actually solving the problem for a specific population, a specific stakeholder? Does the data I'm utilizing to train my model reflect that? And sometimes the data we have is the data that's easy to retrieve or collect, as opposed to the data that would make a big difference in that community or that demographic. And so if we are collecting all provider data for, say, something operational in a hospital, okay, we're, doctors in a hospital doing coding, for different billing issues. Oh, we're doing different times for our surgery. Great. If we're collecting that and then trying to extrapolate for nurses, we're probably not going to solve the problems of nursing.
Right.
And so I think really it's about making sure you're very specific about what you're trying to solve. And is the data you're utilizing for your models actually the data that's going to give you the insights that your customers are wanting?
Right. We had a previous guest who was saying his belief is that one of the largest opportunities right now is just taking, let's just say, healthcare data and turning it from unstructured to structured.
Oh, I would agree with that.
But going back to some of these, actionable playbooks, I'm curious about if you feel there is a low-hanging fruit or some strategy or playbook that you feel that clinicians and practices can be implementing today that would completely be a game changer that they're not even aware about.
Yeah, so I think a simple thing to do is basically a 5 pillars of access audit. So whether you're building today or in a practice today, thinking about those 5 pillars: financial, geographic, knowledge and trust, digital, cultural. How is that impacting your practice? Okay, so if we have a surgical practice here and we're seeing patients in our office, are we having no-shows? One of those pieces of the pie might actually be the reason. Is it because people who aren't coming are too far away? Is it because people who are coming don't get our notifications in the portal or on their phone or whatnot? Is it because the reading level of our notifications is at the 12th grade instead of the 8th grade, or because it's in English instead of other languages? If we look through the lens of those 5 pillars, for most problems, you can keep asking why and think about those pieces, and you'll probably come up with an answer of, hey, it's not working because. That's something we can act on today.
So given that you have a background in product management, I do as well, I'm curious about your thoughts on what product design in healthcare looks like in this age of AI. I feel like right now everything is very much chatbot interfaces, and so much of practicing healthcare is bedside manner. Chatbots aren't necessarily the most, comforting thing that a person wants to interact with. So I'm curious of what you think good design in health tech looks like with AI.
So I think it looks the same as it always has.
Okay.
Is it delighting our customer? I know that's super passé, but when we think about it, if we give a chatbot interface to your grandma trying to discharge her from the hospital, is that helping her? Does she still have more questions? Is she confused? Is she dissatisfied? And that could be with an actual nurse. That could be with a piece of paper. That could be with your interface that you have created. And I think that the way that chatbots are kind of utilized today, they're a little bit of a peanut butter spread. Oh, this is ChatGPT on steroids. Great. I'm glad it's purple now. You really need to differentiate yourself. So from a UX perspective, get back to usability, get back to how the people you're trying to interact with actually talk. So using a super general model isn't necessarily going to be the best if you're talking to doctors, because they talk in a specific way, or talking to Gen Z versus boomers. It's a different vernacular on purpose, and they take the words you utilize and the way you're doing it differently. If someone calls my phone, I am not going to answer that. You call my mother, she's absolutely going to answer that. And so you're going to have to interact with different people in different ways with the chatbot or whatever automation you're utilizing.
So given your kind of combo as a technologist and, surgeon, where do you think AI is making the biggest impact in healthcare right now? And what excites you the most about where it's going?
So I'd say the biggest impact is the basics. So on the operations side, absolutely, because it's always been the safest way to do it. There's less controversy, there's less safety issues. And we've been doing automation and rule-based work in revenue cycle management and a lot of administrative pieces for such a long time. Now we're just making it more predictable and, as you said before, putting those insights to the forefront. But that's not where I'm really excited. I think that's table stakes, and that should be stuff that we can just
it's just raising the floor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am really excited about the ability of new models to diagnose better, to interact better with patients. I have friends who did their PhD and a long time ago, and it took them 6 years to do it. And now their whole PhD could be done in like a weekend with today's technology. And so I feel like we're in a time of discovery. So if we're going to discover cures to cancer, to rare disease, you name it, now is a wonderful time to be alive for those. But again, we can find those pieces. Can we then distribute the solutions to everyone in the world? That's the harder part.
In that same kind of real world operational sense, you've said that many high-tech health initiatives typically fail because there's a disconnect between executives' plans and the reality on the front lines. So can you talk a little bit about, why even the smartest AI tool or digital platform can just fall flat in practice?
A lot of times when we're pitching to a healthcare organization, we're sales pitching. And oftentimes we go solution first. Okay, here's my amazing and shiny AI tool. It's amazing. And you'll get some stakeholders are very excited about that. However, if you don't have the chief medical officer, chief nursing informatics officer, chief health informatics officer, et cetera, who really speak for the provider staff and then have real users give input, it doesn't mean it can be adopted in that hospital system. So ultimately, there's huge political backlash. There's huge, I'd say, resistance to change in these large organizations. And it's not a bad thing. It's more that these are people who have to see a lot of patients every day in stressful situations. And it's kind of on them to make sure they practice safely, effectively, et cetera. That liability is on them. And so if you are presenting for the CTO or the CFO to be excited about a value prop or be excited about technology, that's great. You might get inroads with the C-suite. But unless you have those physician champions, those nursing champions that are ultimately going to be the liaison between your organization, whatever startup or large tech company you are, and the real users, you're going to fall flat.
Right. So it seems like, the folks who are typically building that friction internally or inertia, if it's like, 2 steps back to go potentially 10 steps forward, they're only focused on the 2 steps back and not the, all the benefits that could come with it. So from like a health tech company's perspective, how do you make sure you're building those champions to have that, friction pretty much dissipate? So
provider champions and user champions used to be all you needed. Okay, you just get them on board. They're going to grease the wheels. You're good to go. They're still vitally important. Without them, you won't make, I'd say, big gains with the largest population of a healthcare system, nurses, doctors, people that are actually touching patients. But remember that today, the economics of whatever you're building is vitally important. If you can't provide a real, even basic economic study on, hey, here's why you're saving money, here's how you're increasing revenue, you got to remember that healthcare systems have very slim margins in general. So you need to go both directions. Hey, you need the clinicians, you need people boots on the ground to be on board. You also need to prove to the CFO, to the CEO, et cetera, that this is going to help their entire business because they're taking a macro view on it.
What do you think are good case studies of what that actually looks like that would excite others, healthcare professionals wanting to get into health tech to go, that is a cause that I am supposed to join?
I think it's interesting for healthcare providers in particular to get involved because it takes their time. And so if you're in a practice, you're incentivized to see patients. You're not incentivized to go work with a startup. And so today, if you're working with physician champions or other stakeholders that are clinical, you have to give them something that's worth their while. And you mentioned, what's the cause that I'd be willing to do it for? Why would it be good enough, important enough? I think that's specialty specific in a lot of ways. You'll see with urology as an example, it's a great innovative space. There's a lot of interesting soft tissue robots they're utilizing right now and technologies. And so again, for that group, they've been incentivized to do more and better procedures with better outcomes because of the technology. Great. That's a great way to push them and to include them because, again, as a specialty, very excited about new, latest, greatest tech, et cetera. If you're working with primary care doctors, it's difficult because they, again, have lowest margin, probably the hardest job ever because proactive medical care is not, I'd say, culturally there in the United States in particular, like it is in some other countries where it's more of a socialized medicine thought process. And so if you're going to take their time, you're going to have to make it worth their while. And so I can't tell you how many, I'd say, inquiries I get every day based on my background to be an advisor for X, Y, or Z startup. And it's very flattering and it's all really great work. It's all very impactful. But primary care doctors in particular, you can't feed your family on equity. Especially when you're in the seed pre-seed area, because that equity 9 times out of 10 is going to be worth nothing. So think about the experts you're trying to bring in. You probably have an amazing mission and vision. I'm sure your pitch deck is beautiful and sparkly, but you need to find ways to incentivize these providers to utilize their time. So pay them, give them value, provide registration to conferences they want. Find ways to give them something they can't get themselves, whether it's, oh, we're going to have you on our podcast. Oh, we're going to bring you in for X, Y, or Z. Make it something they care about because they want to be a part of it. That's not it. They're just trying to make sure that it makes sense financially, time-wise, et cetera, because clinicians' time is the best thing they have and the most impactful they have.
Right. So what is something that you care about right now and wish you were putting more time into?
Healthcare access.
Yeah, talk more about that.
Well, I am right now on my book tour, which is exciting.
Yeah.
But it's very different than being in product development or running strategy for an organization. And so I like to be in the mix. I always like to be doing something new, building, driving forward, et cetera. And so while a book tour is interesting and exciting, and honestly, I've met really great organizations and really great people. And I think that's the biggest value of this entire experience. And then the message. So for me, healthcare access is the pinnacle here. And I know that a lot of folks are like, oh, but it's cancer. Oh, but it's diabetes. Oh, but it's this. They're all under access. If we can solve access, we can take all those patients and give them what they need. Because sometimes it's the financial pillar that's in the way, and sometimes it's this. So I think for me, the next step in kind of utilizing my time best, I love to see patients. I still see patients in the charity setting, but I'm ready to take the healthcare access piece and scale it even more. And so I'd like to spend more time scaling access.
And I guess finally, for healthcare professionals or folks, looking to get into tech innovation in the healthcare space, and they want to, build this future that you're talking about, scaling this access, like, what advice do you have for them?
Surround yourself with people that are much smarter than you. Remember that you are only a piece of the puzzle. So for me, I promise never to code. I promise never to vibe code. And ultimately, I always surround myself with the best developers, the best marketers, the best, because then we're going to win. If you are working with a CEO that has an ego or is not a team player, doesn't matter how wonderful your actual solution is, it's going to fail. And so connect yourself with great people doing great things. Because even if the thing doesn't work the first time, great people will make things happen.
Amazing. Dr. Sarah Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Let them know one more time what your book is called, when it's out, and where they can get it.
Sure. So it's called The Borderless Healthcare Revolution. You can see everything on my website, drsarahmatt.com, but it's on pre-order at all the retailers, including Amazon. So go check it out today. It's coming out on December 11th.
Go buy it today. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.